me to jump in, or do you want to wait
Yeah,
for some more people
do
to
it.
hop on? All right, let's do
That's
it.
five.
Okay.
That's five after. Let's roll.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm excited to share this with you. I will go ahead and share my screen now. Here we go. All right. We'll present. Here we go. So yes, if you were in my class in 121, this is going to look very familiar. So just hang in there with me, but hopefully you're able to get some more talking points from today. So Century 21 asked me to do this presentation. Oh, wait, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
For some
yes. And
reason, my
I'll
microphone is
monitor.
orange.
I'll monitor chat in case there's any questions. You guys can pop them in chat, but
Okay.
I'm sure we all have some time for questions at the end too as
Yes,
well. So
absolutely. The way that I did this in Vegas, I think I did take about 35 minutes or so, and then we had 10 minutes for Q&A. So it might work out the same way here. Perfect. So yes, Century 21 asked me to do this two-step listing process where we go and we preview the home first, and then we go on the listing presentation. And so I'm going to touch on that today and why this is so important in today's market. So a little bit about me. You guys just heard a little bit about my introduction. Myself, I've been selling real estate for 9 years now. And then our company has been doing this in the Tampa area for 32 years. And we have 8 office locations, just like you guys. And we're all around the Tampa Bay area. So today I'm going to go over the listing presentation. But in order to share why this is so important, we have to start with the state of the market and what's going on with buyers and sellers today. Because, well, especially now with this whole NAR thing that just happened, we have to show our value more now than ever. So we're going to start with the state of the market. And then we're going to go into pre-qualifying the seller, because pre-qualifying the seller is just as important as pre-qualifying a buyer, right? We don't want to waste our time. So we want to know that they're serious. We're going to go into previewing the property, what not to do on the preview, why it's so important. Then we'll move into how to price the property, how to present to the seller, and then how to position their house on the market to get the most attention. So first, we're going to start with buyers. So you guys are off the hook because in Vegas, I made everybody stand up, but you guys get to stay seated this time. So all of these blue dots represent buyers in today's market. There's about 100 dots here, right? This amount of buyers here that just turned orange are the buyers who are going to purchase a home this year, no matter what the interest rates are. They're like, you know what? I've been doing this for a year and a half. The rates just keep going up. Also, prices keep going up. My rental rates keep going up. This is dumb. I'm ready to buy a house, right? These are the ones that are going to buy no matter what. Well, from Keeping Current Matters, they said roughly half of buyers are going to purchase no matter what, but about almost 25% of them are cash buyers. So they really don't care what the interest rates are. So we have about 70% of the market here is buying regardless of what interest rates are. So that is a lot of buyers for our very limited inventory, right? Are you guys seeing that? Are you guys seeing limited inventory in Raleigh? Yeah, it's kind of a struggle. So we have this flood of buyers trying to buy a very minute range of homes, right? Have you heard the term lock-in sellers? Some people have, some people haven't. It's been a term that's we've used it a lot here in our area. So now we're going to focus on sellers. All of these blue dots now represent home sellers, right? Well, all of the blue dots are sellers that have an interest rate of less than 5%. So they're homeowners with an interest rate of less than 5%. They probably bought in 2020, 2021. They've got a 3.5% interest rate, and they're like, there's no reason for me to sell because my mortgage is probably going to double. It doesn't make sense. I'm just going to wait. Maybe they do an addition on their home. They take out a home equity line of credit. They're finding other ways to change their house without selling, right? So now we have that large population of buyers coming to buy this small amount of orange dots here, which are the properties that are going to sell this year. So this is a pie chart also from Keeping Current Matters, where I got this information from, that kind of breaks down the exact interest rates and how much of the homeowners relate in that market. So about a quarter of them have a less than 3% interest rate. These are the ones that are absolutely not selling. Like, no way, there's no reason for them to sell. They're going to do that HELOC instead, right? between 3 and 4%. We have a little less than half of all homeowners today have an interest rate between 3 and 4. So it doesn't really make sense for them to go from a 3.5% interest rate to a 6.5% interest rate, right? Their mortgage is most likely going to double. These ones between 4 and 5, they may be thinking about it. You know, what's the difference between 4.75% interest rate to a 6.25? Maybe we can make up that difference to get the house that we really want. But really, only about 22% of the homeowners are going to be thinking about selling this year. So another reason this is so important is because, have you guys heard that a lot of agents are leaving the industry? And especially now that it's going to be even more difficult and we need to explain our value more than ever. This is why we are now going to be competing with the best in the business, right? The good agents are going to stay. You guys here on this training are going to stay in the market, and you're going to be competing with other really strong agents. So this listing presentation being done in 2 steps is so valuable, and your competition is not doing this, which is why we have to, right? So the first step is going to be pre-qualifying the seller. We got to find out, are they actually going to sell or are they looky-loos? Then we'll preview their property. We're going to take what we learn on the preview to work into pricing the property. We come back and present to the seller, and then together with the seller, we position their house on the market. So the first step is to pre-qualify, right? And now the reason that we pre-qualify them is to find out, are they a real lead or are they just pulling your chain? How many of you would show a buyer a house or take them out on the weekend if they did not actually speak to a lender first? And probably none of you are raising your hands because you're all smart and you don't want to waste your time, right? We don't want to do the same thing with sellers. So why some sellers just call you up because they want to know the value of their house when they can just look at Zillow or they can look at another public valuation, which we know are not accurate, but we don't want to just have tire kickers, right? So why are they moving? Here's some questions that you can ask to pre-qualify on the phone, right? Do they have to sell? Why are they moving? Where are they moving to? When do they need to be there by? And if their home doesn't sell, do they have, within that time frame, do they have another place that they can go, right? So do they have to sell? These can be, think of it, if someone's moving from Raleigh to Texas, say it's a corporate relocation transfer, and they have a start date for their job, they know that the house that they want in Texas is actually already under contract. That is a highly motivated seller, right? They have a place to go and a time frame that they have to be there. So asking these questions up front gets you to understand the sellers more, and you can relate to them and help them, move through the process. And then another important question to ask them when you're pre-qualifying is, what do you feel the approximate value is of your home? This is good because sellers are savvy. People are savvy these days, and they do have resources to online valuations and things. And sometimes it's important to understand where they're coming from and know their price in their head, so that when you do go on your presentation, you can assure them that you're listening and say, I know that you wanted to get $450,000 for your house. So let's look at the market today and see if we can get that and what we need to do to achieve that price. So show them that you're actively listening, but also use that number and then present the facts, right? So when I go to set the preview and I'm talking to them on the phone, this is a script that I will use to set this preview appointment, right? So I'd say, hey, Sally, on a first appointment, what I usually like to do is come over and just take a quick preview. It usually takes between 10 and 15 minutes. I'll take notes of any updates that you've done to the home, just so that I can properly price it versus the competition. So when would be a good time for me to come and stop by this week? Would Thursday at 2 or Friday at 4 work best for you? And let them answer the question, right? So if that time doesn't work for them, they'll usually give you another time and you can work with it. If it's a Monday, you could say, would today at 4 or tomorrow at 3 work best? So look at your schedule, see what works, but giving them those 2 options puts you in a position of power, and it puts you in a position of being the professional, and that's what they want. Like, we need to show our value. We are the professionals. So give them options and put yourself in that position of power, right? And then it's also super important that when you're setting this appointment, make sure to let them know, I will not be coming with any pricing. I do need to see your house before I am able to properly price it and make notes on any updates that you've done. So this will strictly be 10 to 15 minutes for me to come and take some notes, and I won't be bringing any pricing. That'll be for our next appointment. And you want to reassure them, because if they expect you to come with pricing and you don't have any, then you're going to look bad. So make sure to set this expectation up front.
Quick question, Jessica, because I know there's always some skepticism to this stuff because I used to teach it this way too. Do you get any
Yeah,
pushback on this?
I do not get any pushback on this.
Okay.
Yep, I don't. I really have never experienced that. I think when you say this, they're like, oh, I mean, that makes sense. You should be able, like, you should come see my house first. And we're not public valuations. And so I have an example of why this is important, actually, that I can touch on. But yeah, nope, I have not. In Vegas, I had an agent ask me at the end, are you worried that if you don't come with pricing on the first appointment, that your competition will get the listing signed before you come back? And my answer was no, because what I'm going to teach you to do on the preview is creating a genuine relationship with the seller, and you're putting yourself into their world and getting them to trust you, so that when you do come with pricing, they respect what you're saying because they know, like, and trust you by this point, if that makes sense. All right. So when you're on the preview, what is it not for, right? The preview is not for telling the seller what they need to change about their house. So this is not the time for you to come in and be like, oh my God, your curtains are hideous. The carpet is stained everywhere. Like, we have to replace the floors. We have to clean the bathrooms. Like, this is not the time for you to point that stuff out. And it's not the time to talk about pricing. The preview is strictly for getting to know the house and getting to know the seller and putting yourself in a position of professionalism. So you have to see the home in person before you can price it. And now my example of this is, I was actually on a listing preview about 2 weeks ago, and this is the property. Before I go on the preview, I like to look up public valuations just so I have a background idea of what the public thinks the house is worth. I'll look up some things on the MLS, but I don't talk about that with the seller when I'm there in person. So what I did with this property is looked it up on Zillow. The Zestimate says 570. When I was on the MLS, I was looking beforehand and I was seeing maybe 625. So maybe my range is going to be 570 to 625. That's what I went into the preview with in my head. When I got there, the house was gorgeous. It was immaculate. I pulled up, it has a fresh new paint job. The house was blue, actually. All of the landscaping was gorgeous. She told me that she just redid her brick paver pool patio. The screen was perfect. Her pool heater was just replaced. She had 12-foot ceilings, crown molding with the most intricate detail. Like, the house was gorgeous. And I was like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting. I was expecting this old dated 1990s house. And I thought I was going to walk in and there was going to be, green countertops. And no, it was not that. So you got to see the house in person before you come with the price. By the end of my appointment with her, and I went back and did the pricing for this before my presentation, we're actually going to list at a price of $665. So I would have left $60,000 to $75,000 on the table had I not seen this house in person first. And that's why it's so incredibly important. We are not Zillow. We are better than Zillow. And this is the step that makes us better than Zillow. So another thing that the preview is good for, and probably the most important reason to do the preview, is to create rapport with the seller. If nothing else, make it nothing about the house, find some commonality with the seller. If you're walking through the house and you see a folded American flag on the shelf, ask them who in your family was in the service. Find things in their house that you can connect to. And if you were in Vegas, I love my dog. So I like to bring that into, if they have dogs, talk about their dogs. If they have cats, talk about their cats, talk about their kids, anything that you can see. If they have a picture on the wall from a place that you've also been, oh my gosh, I saw that you've been to Houston, Texas. I've been there too. Like, how was your experience? If anything, the preview is for connecting with the seller and putting yourself into their world. You're doing this because you're going to build trust with the seller. And who is the most safe person in your world? It's you, right? You feel comfortable with you, with people that are like you. So the idea of the preview is for us to take a step back, put ourselves into neutral, and become the seller, right? Like what they like, say what they say, stand how they stand, and put yourself into their world, because people like people who are like themselves. So this is a lot of words, and I will give you guys these slides at the end of the presentation. But what I like to cover here is the personality styles and using the preview to analyze the personality styles of the seller, right? So make it like a game. It's kind of fun. You're doing nothing about the house here, nothing about pricing. It's strictly getting to know them. So how many of you have heard of the DISC, the personality profiles? Yes. Okay, good. So we live by this at Beggins. We love these. And the whole goal of this preview is trying to identify which personality style the seller is. Are they a D personality? A D is somebody who is dominant, straight to the point. They don't like the details. Like, tell me exactly how it is. No fluff, no leave behind, like no nothing. Just like tell me what I need to know and I'll do it. If they are an I personality, they're probably like you and I. They're realtors. They have a lot of energy, right? And you can tell if you're at the preview and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, Sally Joe down the street, she comes over for wine nights all the time. I just love my neighbors. And they start talking like that. You can tell they're the high I personality. They are not attention to detail. So you've got to reel them in sometimes, but knowing their personality is going to help you as you move forward. If they're an S personality, they're probably very sensitive. These are the caregivers. Maybe they're moving to take care of an elderly family member. They put others before themselves, right? They're soft. So if you go into their house with this giant personality, you're going to scare them. You're going to scare them away, and they're going to be like, ooh, I don't know who this person is or what they're trying to do, but they're too much for me. So if you can tell their personality, put yourself into neutral, right? And then the C personality is somebody who is very analytical. So they like the details rather than the D personality where they're like, no details, just get to the end. The C wants all of the details. So if you can kind of pick out their personality style from that first phone call when you're setting the preview, you'll know how to go into the preview appointment and what to say. So if they like the details, highlight details in their house, maybe talk about the market itself. They like that. Okay, so this is how you're going to get into their world and gain their trust, because you're becoming just like them. So what to do when you're on the preview, right? So this is when you find commonality like we talked about, but take notes while you're doing it. So I have an iPad. I bring my iPad with my Apple Pencil and I write down things. Bring a notebook with you and a pen. And as they're talking, tell them, I'm going to take some notes throughout this, as I'm walking around, just so I can remember later. Do you mind if I take some pictures? This helps because if you have a couple of these in a week, or maybe you're showing buyers later that afternoon, you're not really going to remember what the carpet looked like in the bedroom, right? So it's okay to take photos throughout this time and just ask them. And this shows that you're actively listening to them. So, and then ask them questions that will help you go back and price the home. So I make sure to touch on this when I'm there. What are some of the reasons that you bought this house? And asking them that is also going to get into their world. So one of their answers might be, and this is where you want to listen carefully, right? One of their answers might be, I love sitting on my back porch in the morning. It's so quiet. I can hear the birds chirping. You heard quiet, you heard birds chirping. So they care about the sounds, right? They're an auditory personality. Now you can make that note auditory, that you hear them talking about all these sounds. So as you're going through your presentation and working with them over time, bring that into your presentation and bring that into working with them. And these are the sales skills that we need to differentiate ourselves in today's market. Other people aren't doing this. So get really tactical about listening to them and taking notes. And if you ask them what their favorite features are, maybe add these features to your public remarks, right? So when you do list it on the MLS, when you're reading about the description of the house, put in, that it's so quiet on the back, you can hear the birds chirping while you're drinking your coffee. Bring in what the seller said And then when they read your description, they're like, oh my gosh, they get me. And it's all in their subconscious that they're doing this, but they're like, man, I like this person. And that's going to be the difference, right? And then there are some things that you need to ask to make sure that you're properly pricing the home. So what is the age of the roof? What is the age of the AC, the water heater? Knowing these things, in Florida, roofs are a big deal right now. I'm sure in Raleigh they are too. The older the roofs get, the worse the insurance company. They're like, nope. So if you know the roof needs to be replaced, that's going to affect your pricing analysis, right? You're either going to price it higher and say seller will replace roof before closing, or we need to price it lower than the competition. So knowing the age of these items is going to be very important as well. And then ask them, what upgrades have you done since you've lived here? And then as they walk you through the house and they're like, oh, we changed this bathroom vanity and added this tile, compliment them on it. Even if you hate it, right? Even if it's like the ugliest thing you've ever seen, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I love it. Where did you get the tile from? And just create a conversation with them. And then bring a leave behind. So this is important. In the leave behind, I actually have an example coming up in a second of what just a few parts of it. But what I do is I print some things out that we have in our Moxie presentations, actually. And I put a little plastic sleeve on it. And you can also bring your listing agreement, a blank one. And I have a little Century 21 folder that I bring and I just leave it behind. I will usually go through it quickly. I'll just briefly kind of go through the pages. And what I bring on the leave behind has nothing to do with price. It's strictly what we do with Century 21 Beggins to market the property and how we are going to represent them, right? So we don't talk about price here, but having something especially for that C personality that's very analytical, bringing that leave behind is going to show professionalism. And it's something for them to remind them that you're coming back. Right. So if they see that on their kitchen table, they're like, oh yeah, I know Jessica's going to be back in 2 days. So it's just peace of mind to have that. Here's an example. So we have a timeline of some like what to expect throughout the listing process, what happens once we go under contract and what takes us to closing. I talk about key market factors that affect price. And then we go into how we're going to market the property as well. So I have about maybe 10 or 12 pages that I leave behind. And these are, I'm sure you guys have some awesome things that your brokerage does that differentiate you, right, from the competition. Add that in. Our sales manager likes to say, add the sizzle. This is the time for the sizzle. Now, once we've gone on the preview, we go back to work on pricing. And these are the 6 things that I look at when I'm pricing a property. So we look at the market conditions, which is why we started the presentation today with the market conditions, right? We know there is a ton of buyers, a very limited amount of listings right now. So maybe we can get away with listing it a few thousand higher because there's limited inventory. So knowing the market conditions is going to affect the price. The terms or the incentive that the seller offers, like if they need to replace a roof before closing, that would be something that affects price, right? Exposure. And with Century 21, we're lucky to have maximum exposure. Century 21 is a global marketing powerhouse, and that's exactly how I describe it. Your listing is going to be on over 170 different websites. It's going to be translated into 16 different languages. We are going to be where the buyers are shopping. Comparable properties, obviously, we know this as realtor. I also incorporate pending sales, because in the past recent years, we haven't had as many expired listings. So I look at pending as what is a price that attracted the buyer to the house, right? And then the property's features and benefits and how motivated the seller is. And I'll show you guys at the end my estimated net sheet that I use. And depending on the seller's motivation to sell, maybe they have to be in Texas for their job in 45 days, then we got to move quick, right? And this is the price that's going to get you a buyer quickly. So we take all of that into consideration. And then there are 4 factors, and I do go over this with them. This is part of my leave behind, that have 0 impact on price. So what the seller paid for it, right? We love this one. I actually, I had a client close last October, And he called me a couple weeks ago and he said, "Oh my God, there's a schizophrenic living next to me. I can't live here anymore. Like, what am I going to do?" And it just like sucks because what he paid for it in October, I can't just jack up the price because he just bought it. Like, we can't do that. It's what is today's market, not what they paid for it. There's certain investments that they made in the property. Now, we know this as realtors, but if somebody, if they put in a pool, they're not going to get, dollar for dollar what they spent for the pool back. What the seller wants to net from the sale does not affect the actual market value of the property and what those outside of the industry think. So Susie's brother's sister's aunt who says, "Oh my God, I think you could sell that house for $650. I can't believe they said $450. Like, nope, doesn't matter. That has zero impact on the price, right? You are the professional. You are coming with the true facts because you have their back and we don't want to skew them and get them upset with us at the end, right? So we focus on the facts. So these are some of the filters that I use when pricing a property. And you guys are savvy. You guys probably know this, but here's some that I use. I like to stay within plus or minus 300 square feet of the subject property. I do that because the larger or the smaller you go with square footage, the less of a comp it is. And the more an appraiser has to adjust, and every appraiser adjusts differently. So try to stay plus or minus 300 square feet. Year built is very important. I try to stay within, this is just, it's so hard, a 5 to 10 year range. If something's built in the early 90s, try to stay in the early 90s. Don't use a new construction, but you guys know this. Speaking to the choir here. Pool or no pool? Because of how different appraisers will adjust for a pool, I just get as niche as I can. So I try to get the exact subject property and then I'll start branching out. But if a home has a pool, I'm starting with only homes with a pool. And one story or two also matters. And another thing that matters is block or frame. And I think you guys are probably more frame houses in Raleigh. Yeah. In Florida, we have a lot of block houses, and an appraiser actually adjusted like $100,000 for a frame versus a block house. It was wild. But knowing if it's one story or two also affects the build cost, and appraisers look at that as well. Bedroom and bathroom count. And then I try to stay within 1 mile of the subject property. So I try to price it as closely as an appraiser would. And then if I need to make wiggle room from there to find more properties, that's where I'll start to go out. So if a home is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, and I can't really find 3.2s, maybe you look at 3.2.5, or maybe you look at a 4.2 and make the most minor adjustments that you can to find the properties that are most similar. And what I'm doing when I'm filtering for these is I'm looking for 5 properties that are currently active on the market today. And what that does is shows the seller what their current competition is. So if you were a buyer's agent, you were taking buyers out this weekend, what are the top 5 properties that you're going to show them, right? That's the idea behind showing them what's active. What are 5 properties that have recently sold on the market? Because those are true facts that the appraiser is going to use to price the property. And then if you can find them, because the market is changing a little bit, 5 properties that have recently expired on the market. And what these show are prices that did not attract a buyer, right? That was a failed sale for whatever reason, and kind of read into it. If you need to call the listing agent and find out what happened to it, this will help you with your seller and shows a level of professionalism, right? And then the idea with this is creating a price range. So within this range, if we price it on the high end, it's going to take longer to sell your property. If we price it on the low end, we're going to get a quick sale. And then focusing on the days on market. So for the sold properties, what was the average days on market? How long did it take to sell? And if, like right now, we're looking at 30 to 45 days. So tell the seller it's going to take about 30 to 45 days to get this price. And when you give them that estimated net that I'll show you at the end, that's kind of a way that you can get that price that you're looking for by showing them what their net is going to be. Sometimes that's a better incentive. They think they want 500. But when they see what they're going to make at a 450 price, they're like, oh, well, that's what I wanted to take home. So it makes sense. So I use MoxieWorks to do this. Are you guys incorporating Moxie? A little bit? Yes, good. Okay, wonderful. So this is how I do my presentation. This is just an example of what it looks like. Moxie makes it interactive, easy to use. It's beautiful. The sellers love it. It's color, lots of color, and they can actually, I bring an iPad with me and they can actually click on a photo and scroll. It's a wonderful way to do the presentation. So now when you go to present to the sellers, right, you've done all your pricing, you feel really confident about your price, you know about their dog and their grandfather was in the service, and you know all these things about them, you're going back for the presentation. So you're going to walk in, you're going to take control of the situation, and you're going to ask for the business, right? So we use Mike Ferry's script, listing presentation script, basically. So it's like, you know, thanks again for having me over. This should only take between 5 and 25 minutes. Let's go have a seat at the kitchen table. This is you walking in, taking charge of the situation and telling them where they're going to sit in their own house. It might feel weird at first, but the more you do it, the better you're going to start feeling, and your presentation is going to be really confident. So you're going to repeat and you're going to affirm the things that they've already told you, right? You're going to talk about their dog again, and you're going to say, you know, it was really quiet when I was driving in here, and you're going to point out the things that they said on the preview. And then you're going to work on mirror matching them. So finding their personality, matching their energy levels. If they're soft and sweet, you're going to be soft and sweet. If they're loud and obnoxious, be loud and obnoxious with them, and kind of make it a game. It gets fun. But I will have a funny story on this, and whoever was in Vegas is going to hear this again. But I was door knocking back in the day with one of my coworkers, and we knock on the door, and this guy's name's Bob. I'll never forget it. And we walk in, and he's like moving his eyebrows like this, and it's like tongue is sticking out, and he's doing all this weird stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, what do we do? So we walk in, and he's like, do you guys want a tequila shot? And he's doing all this weird stuff. And I found my eyebrows going like this. And my friend was laughing. She's like, Jessica, you don't mirror match the weirdos. I was like, okay, I'll back off. I'll take a chill pill. But when you start practicing this, you start doing it around everybody. So it's kind of funny. Just make a game out of it. It's a good time. And then ask them, start your listing presentation with, let's quickly take a moment to talk about the questions that we talked about over the phone or that we talked about on the preview, right? So I have a link in here that goes over the listing presentation script that's from Mike Ferry. We've Begginized it a little bit. And when I send this presentation, you'll be able to click this link and download, but you guys probably have your own version. So really try to internalize the script and make it your own, right? When you go on these presentations. And now we move into positioning. So you're going on your listing presentation, you're going through your script, you're repeating and affirming, you're putting yourself in their shoes, getting their personality. Now it's time to position the property on the home. So this is the end of your presentation. This is the pricing part, pretty much. This is an example of what it looks like on MoxieWorks. For this house specifically, I couldn't find 5 that were currently active, so I did what I could. I have 3. So these top 3 properties are currently on the market for sale and will be your biggest competition. These properties are currently under contract, so these prices attracted a buyer, and these are the properties that have recently sold that are most like your home. And I tell them, I stay within plus or minus 300 square feet of your home, and it gives them averages, it gives them days on market. You can see the sold prices. Another good thing about this is because it is completely interactive, you can click on a house and you can start scrolling through the photos and say, look at this one. This one has floors just like yours. They also updated the kitchen, and you can point out things that are similar and different to their subject property, right? So this is a really fun interactive tool. And the idea behind positioning, my uncle is also in the business, and he taught us back in the day. He likes to compare it to cans of beans on a shelf in the grocery store, right? And so you can talk about this with your seller and say, if you see 3 cans of beans on the shelf and 1 can is dented, 1 can is the generic brand, and 1 can is organic, they're clearly all going to have different prices, right? So if we want the dented can to sell for a higher price, we have to remove the dent. So we can either add more features and benefits to your home to get the higher price, or we'll have to adjust the price down to make up for the difference in value, right? So the can of beans on the shelf is kind of a fun one. But this is what I use with MoxieWorks to do this. And then when you're talking about the price, so back here, the average sold price is about $350, right? These are what the properties were listed for. And sometimes it's good to go over the list price versus the sales price because there's about a $10,000 difference here in the averages. So using the facts is what's going to get you that proper price. And then at that $350 price, we're sitting here at average days on market. And using this net sheet, I've plugged in title insurance, mortgage payoff, our broker fees, title fees, things like that. So that when I did this presentation for this client, she was focusing down here on what am I going to net from the sale? This helps to overcome commission objections because they're seeing, she told me, she's like, I need 20. I need to walk away with 20,000. Okay, well, 339, the average sold price is 350. We're absolutely going to be able to sell for that. So literally zero commission objections because she said, this is 14,000 more than I was going to make, than I thought I was or needed to make. So I really like using this. And do you guys incorporate this into your presentation or something similar? It's a huge value add, and it is the biggest way that I overcome the commission objections. So that is the end of my presentation so we talked about how to pre-qualify them to make sure if they're an actual seller, some questions to ask, right? We talked about going to preview the property, how to get into their world, find their personality, become them, and then go back, work on the pricing, do your presentation, and then help them to position their property on the market so that it sells fast or slow. Maybe they want it to sell slow. So finding their motivation is also super important. Yay. Do you guys have any questions?
Does anyone have, before you guys ask questions, and I'm sure, Jessica, you didn't start out your very first listing presentation. And this is what I said, it's like you are as good as you are now. And I'm always telling you guys, you really got to practice a lot and you have to master,
yes,
whatever you're doing, because whatever level you are, that's what that seller is getting. And this is a really good training because that's how I used to teach it. But this is a way better presentation than I ever had. And it does work. And because if you set those expectations, like you're saying, it's like, I don't know how you can set a price of a house without seeing it. I actually had the opposite happen to me. I knew the person I was helping her buy a condo downtown. Was going to do her listing, went to the listing presentation, didn't preview it, went in there. She did a ton of upgrades. She ended up listing with someone else more familiar with the neighborhood that knew how to account for all those upgrades. I underpriced her by about 40,000. And so she obviously went with the other person and got the price. I still hoped to buy the condo, but I lost the listing. It was a good lesson learned. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were able to go there first and see that value add, you could incorporate it into your presentation. It does take some practice for sure. And it's not easy to learn their personality either. That takes practice.
Yes. Anyone have any questions? Got to have some questions. I love
some of the questions I had in Vegas.
I do. Well, I'll just talk for a couple of minutes because
please do.
There are questions I would be asking, but I already know the answers. But the net sheet, and that does avoid a lot of commission questions. I've talked to a lot of really good listing agents, and that net sheet and doing that part of it well avoids the discussion about commission, because if you're charging a 6% commission and they're netting what they want to net, or how those options based on time, absorption analysis, right? Do you do absorption analysis at all, or are you just basically using your market analysis?
I use the market analysis, but we actually used to do the absorption rate, and
it doesn't matter as
I
much.
need to incorporate that.
But that allows you to avoid some of those hard discussions, because if they're focused
Yes.
on the commission and what they're losing versus what they're netting, right?
Yes.
A lot of times we have a net, they have a net in mind. And if they're getting that net, commission and other costs aren't much as a factor as if they're not hitting that net, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I found that it's my easiest tool. That one that I showed you guys, I actually presented last week, and my seller was in the office and there was another agent listening, and he was like, "Whoa, you need to send me that because I need to do that on my next presentation." Because it handles all the objections because they're
Yeah,
getting what they want.
yeah, exactly. And when you set the preview, do you also set the follow-up appointment at the same time, or do you wait until you're at the house?
I wait until I'm at the house. So when I'm at the preview and I'm taking notes and everything before I leave, I say, I can come back. Depends on how quickly you have in your schedule to do the pricing analysis, but try to go back within 24 to 48 hours, because you don't want to lose their attention. If you wait another week, sometimes I don't know, it's not as good. It's like, keep it going, keep the momentum. So I try to go back within 48 hours. And if it doesn't work for their schedule, then you work around their schedule, but try to go back within 48 hours and set that appointment right there in front of them, and use Google Calendar and get their email right there. What's the best email for you? I'll go ahead and send you a calendar invite, right? So now you're getting contact information, showing professionalism, and that's how I like to do it when I'm there.
And that'll also avoid them, if they do meet with someone else, a lot of times they say, well, I've got more people to meet with. You're going to have a set meeting already. And a lot of times those sellers will keep those meetings. Even if you offer to cancel it for them, sometimes they're still
Right.
going to keep it. When you're doing the leave behind, you mentioned
Mhm.
you're going for about 10 or 15 minutes, you're doing your preview or talking with them. Are you just kind of showing them, hey, this is where you can find our market stuff. This is where you can find this, this, and this, and kind of going high level through, because you're not literally going through all that in detail at that point.
Right.
You're
Depends
doing
on their personality. If they are really detailed, I have sat down at their table with them and gone page by page through the leave behind. If I can tell they're like, want me out of there, I'm like, oh, here's a leave behind, just something that you can review before our next presentation or
okay.
next
And
appointment.
if you go through the detailed one, you go through the C person and you're going through that, then basically you're coming back for a pricing thing. Otherwise, you're coming back for more of a dog and pony show.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
A
Then you can
sizzle.
say, we reviewed a lot of the marketing last time I was here, so we'll just get into the numbers today. And it's
Okay.
going to be different per personality and per person that you're working with.
Now, here's one. You probably go back to the house, but do you ever bring him to your office on the second appointment?
Yes, I do.
You do. Good.
Yep.
Love that.
Yep. Yep, I do. And our office, this is our office in the background, is super cool. We're really proud of it. So I like to bring them in, and they get to meet some of the other agents, especially if they're close by. And then I
That's
think
one
that
of the
shows a level of professionalism as well.
That's one of the advantages of the preview. And I'm a big proponent of this. I talked to another Century 21 agent years and years ago that did every listing presentation in the office. And the reason he said is because it makes it more of a business meeting. We're selling a product, takes the emotion out of the house, because
Yes.
you have a lot of memories in the home. There's a lot of things going on. Like, you think it's a lot of times sellers think it's worth more than it is. When you get them in a business setting and you're talking business, my job is to get the highest and best price for your house, and this is how we're going to do it. It takes
Right.
all the emotion. Well, this is where I raised my kids, and this, and I'm so proud of this remodel we did, even if it's good or bad, whatever. It
Right.
it eliminates that. And so if you could do that, I would highly recommend it.
I would too. I would highly recommend it. They get to see you as a professional, not someone in their house, because in their house, they do feel like they're in control. Where when you bring them into your office, like you said, now it's a business setting. This is a business transaction. This is like we would do. We want to get you the most money and value for your home. And it's putting you again in that position of power subconsciously. And I would highly recommend it as well.
What's your conversion rate?
That's a good question. I think it's around 80%. It's
Okay,
pretty high, but
it's
I've
high.
gotten a lot of referrals, lately from friends or family that know me, trust me. I do a lot on social media. So I feel like they get to know who I am, and they're more familiar with me and sometimes my dog when I even walk into their house the first time. And I think that helps with the conversion rate.
Yeah, and Jessica, you do a really good job on social media, by the way. And I would
Thank
highly
you.
recommend following her or asking to friend her. I'm sure she might friend back another Central 21 colleague, but
Yes.
it's really well done. You do a really, really good job. You get a very good sense of your personality. I always tell you guys, people are going to check you out. They're going to
Yes.
go online. They're going to go check your social media. They're going to go on Google. They're going to go check you out. And so you want to put your
It's like
best
a
foot
virtual
forward.
business card, right?
Yeah. And people that haven't met yet, right, or just meeting, get to know you better. And so when you do have a chance to do a buy sell side with them and stuff like that, they already feel like they know you some because you work in your personality plus a lot of market information. So it's a really nice mix. It's just really well done. So I highly recommend you check her out.
Thank
Anyone have any
you.
questions? I mean, I, you know,
There
come on.
are,
Everyone's
yeah.
being shy. Everyone's being really
Oh,
shy.
yes. Basements definitely play a role when you're pricing. We just don't have those in Florida.
Yeah. That's why I texted her because I'm from the other coast in Florida. Well, I'm not from there, but I grew up there. So we don't have basements. You don't dig very far down close to the
Yeah.
coast in Florida.
No.
And
My father-in-law lives outside of Raleigh, actually, in Clayton.
oh wow.
Yeah, he lives in Clayton. So we go to his house and he shows us his basement that's kind of above ground still, but it's huge. You can stand up and walk around in there. He uses it as
Yeah.
storage. It's insulated. It's the whole thing. I'm like, wow.
Well, next time you come up to Clayton, you'll have to come and visit us because we're not
I
that far away.
absolutely will. I
That would be
absolutely
awesome.
will.
Any other questions, guys? This is great. And I started teaching what Jessica's teaching after I got back from the annual NAR conference. I was in Chicago, and I went to a luxury listing segment, and the guy was talking about listing presentations, and he was doing the same exact thing. And I'm like, why can't we do this? And why does it have to be a luxury listing? Why not give everyone that same experience? And that's when I came back and started teaching the preview piece, because how do you properly price a house? And you're getting two touches with a person instead of one. You have two
Yes,
opportunities to impress them. The other two guys are doing it one time. And quite frankly, it makes them question the other agent's prices when you're saying, how can I price a home without actually
exactly.
seeing what's in your home? And
I
it
think it does. I think
works.
it puts down the other guy. It makes you look better. Like you're taking more time and more effort to give them the true price. So how's this other guy doing this without
Yeah,
seeing
so
my
I'm going to
home?
put in the real effort and price. You could say, I'm not going to just look on MLS and come up with a bunch of comps and then give you a price. I
Mhm.
want to give you a price that's reflective of the true value of your home. And the only way for me to do that is to come and see your home and see
Exactly.
what you've done with your home and how it might be priced compared to your competition. And I think that's a giant value add. And
That's the
you get
perfect,
another,
what you said is the perfect script to say on the first phone call.
there you go. I
And like you
practice, and
said,
I don't
one or
even
two
sell homes.
touches.
And
Yeah.
it's funny, and I actually practice scripts because when you're teaching, you should
Mhm.
be able to, do
Rehearse
that.
them.
And
Yeah.
but and I think it is a big advantage, and you're getting to know their personality a bit more. So when you go back for the presentation, now you've learned a lot about them. You can incorporate that into the presentation, and then if you show them examples of marketing you're going to do for them, you can already start incorporating some of that stuff in the marketing, and bam, you're in the first position in the poll,
Yep.
right?
Because they feel
You're
comfortable with you. They're like, oh, this person
uh,
gets me. And it's subconscious, but they get you.
Yeah.
It's
And you
kind of,
guys can practice this stuff. You don't have to, literally, whether it's from a mirror or grabbing each other or like me, I just talk to myself all the time and it works.
it
People
works.
might look at me in the car and say, well, who's he talking with? Well, now you can get away with it because they just think you're on your speakerphone or whatever.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
They
But
just
you're
think I'm
actually
talking to someone.
practicing your listing
I'm
presentation.
not talking to myself. So, well,
Right.
all right. Well, if there's no other questions, I know Jessica's time is valuable. So
Well,
we'll
thank
let her go.
you.
This was really awesome. And we'll make sure you guys get the slides, and I'm sure you guys are hungry to get into the scripts and stuff like that. And
Perfect.
can't
Yeah,
thank
I'll
you
send
enough.
you a link.